This is one of those very rare situations where I'm reviewing a movie that just came out, and yet I feel like I'm one of the last people to have seen this movie. Everyone that I know within the YouTuber, influencer, or film critic circle has already seen this, and now I'm finally here with my own review. This is Shazam. Damn it! Well, I guess since I'm 28, I would have turned into a 14-year-old kid instead of a superhero. Life is disappointing sometimes. But anyway, this is Shazam. It's the 7th film in the DC Extended Universe and is a very different movie from the other movies in this franchise. This movie follows a teenager named Billy Batson who has pretty much run away from tons of foster homes in an attempt to try to find his mom. He gets taken into another foster home where he befriends this kid who is obsessed with superheroes like Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Superman. It seems like every day he's wearing a different superhero shirt, and yet no Marvel characters actually exist. That's a very weird world, but whatever, that's the DC universe. Legally, they can't have Marvel characters in there, so it makes perfect sense. But one day, Billy Batson comes across this old wizard, played by Djimon Hounsou, who tells him to touch his magical staff, say the wizard's name, and his powers will flow through Billy. So every time Billy says the word Shazam, he transforms into Zachary Levi, who plays the superhero by the name of Captain Sparklefingers. I'm pretty sure that's the name they give him. But in all seriousness, though, the character in the comics is referred to as Captain Marvel, but obviously since Marvel's Captain Marvel exists, they can't use that name. And I actually don't know much about this particular character, but from what I understand with my research, this version of Captain Marvel was created around the time Superman was created, and I believe when I did my research, there was a point where the character was so popular that it outsold Superman comics, which is kind of hard to believe because Superman's one of the most famous comic book characters out there. But if that's true, that's pretty incredible. So when the trailers for this movie came out, I thought it was very cool. It was sort of like Big meets a comic book movie, and I love Big. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember loving that movie. And that's one of the big things that makes this movie work particularly well. I don't think it's as great as Big, but it definitely has that childlike innocence, and it helps that the main character is in fact a kid. One of my biggest problems with DC heroes is that most of them are based around Greek gods, and it's really hard to connect with them on a more human level. This movie works because your main character is actually a kid, and sure, his superhero persona is very godlike. Shazam is pretty much Superman, but with lightning effects and magic. But with Billy Batson in particular, it's easy to identify with this kid, especially if you're a foster kid yourself. And even though Billy Batson will do some very unlikable things here and there, he's still a likable enough guy, and in a way, very sympathetic. But not to the point where he's brooding. He's still a kid. And the kid who plays him, Asher Angel, does a really good job. And the dynamic that he has with his foster brother Freddy works great as well whenever he's Billy Batson or when he's Shazam. And speaking of Shazam himself, Zachary Levi is so good in this role. He still has that personality and energy of a 14-year-old kid, and every time Zachary Levi is on screen, I was loving the movie. In fact, I'm kind of disappointed that this movie didn't come out when I was much younger, because this would have been the perfect movie to see at a younger age. And the scenes where Shazam actually discovers his superpowers is fun. It's in a way the Superman movie that I wanted Man of Steel to be, where it's very fun, it's hopeful, it makes you excited. And even though Shazam is pretty much a kid in the body of a grown adult superhero, he still has that notion of wanting to do the right thing and save people, even if his methods for going out saving people are, let's just say, naive. Because he's a kid, he's still got some growing to do. It honestly makes a lot more sense than in Man of Steel, where we have a 33-year-old Superman who's kind of discovering his powers. I'm like, 33 is too old for you to just be discovering these powers and getting used to them. So that's why I say this is kind of the Superman movie that I wanted Man of Steel to be. And what I really love about this movie is that it's the first DCEU movie that has a much lighter tone, and you don't have to compare it to any movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As much as I love everything about Wonder Woman except the last 15 minutes, you look at that movie and it's pretty much Thor meets Captain America. With the exception of one element, which I'll get to in a bit, Shazam never has that moment where you go, this is like that other MCU movie. No, it pretty much stands on its own. But I know somebody's gonna go down in the comments and say, okay, so which Captain Marvel movie is actually better? Why are you doing this? Like, they're two completely different movies and shouldn't be compared. So I'm not going to even go down that route. But I will say that this movie does have its issues. And the issues pretty much boil down to the two elements in this movie that DC continues to have a problem with. One, I can't give a pass, but the other, I'm willing to give a pass on this one. The element of this movie that I cannot give a pass to is the villain. You have Mark Strong in this movie, who is a really good actor, but here he's pretty much playing Mark Strong as a villain. It's no different from all the other movies he's been in where he's played supervillains. And the opening of this movie is actually showing his supervillain origin, and I thought it was actually poorly filmed and kind of awkward. And when I said that there's one element to this movie that you could compare to another MCU movie, it is with Mark Strong, because this is all laid out in the opening of the movie, but he is approached by this very same wizard that gives Billy Batson these magical powers. And the wizard denies the younger version of the villain these powers because he's tempted by the 7 deadly sins. So the villain's entire motivation is to pretty much find whoever the wizard actually chose and take his powers away. Now, the MCU movie I compare this to is Captain America the First Avenger, the dynamic between Steve Rogers and the Red Skull, where Dr. Erskine preferred to use the super soldier serum on Steve Rogers because he was a good man that could do great things, whereas with Johann Schmidt, he was a bad guy who would ultimately become worse and turn into the Red Skull. So the hero-villain dynamic between Shazam and Thaddeus Sivana, the villain that Mark Strong plays, is very parallel between Steve Rogers and Johann Schmidt. I mean, the actual parallel to the First Avenger didn't bother me. What bothered me is that this character is not particularly strong or very interesting, and given that this is the 7th DCEU movie and they've never had a good villain up to this point, it's kind of inexcusable. Now, the other problem that DC continues to have are the special effects. The special effects in here are probably the worst of the entire series. But I'm willing to give him a pass on this one, because unlike Batman vs. Superman and Justice League, which both movies cost between $250 to $300 million and had terrible CGI, this movie's CGI is worse, but this movie isn't as expensive. This one cost between $80 to $100 million, so it's easier to let them slide on this one. And despite all the problems I have with this movie, the terrible special effects, and the weak villain, this is a lot of fun. The movie has a great pace, a great hero, good dynamic between him and the rest of the cast, and at the end of the movie, it can be very heartfelt. This movie has a lot of heart, something that I think is missing from the entire series with the exception of Wonder Woman, and I just left the movie feeling very happy. Would I see this again? Probably. I'd probably own it when it comes out on Blu-ray, and I'd definitely say it's worth seeing in your lifetime. It's a lot of fun. This is the perfect superhero movie along with Spider-Man Homecoming to watch if you're a teenager, because you'll just have that great feeling that you could become a superhero as well. And yeah, I highly recommend it. And that's my review for Shazam. I hope you enjoyed it. Now I want to hear what you guys have to say about the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? Were you excited for this movie, or were you a little hesitant before then? Let me know down below. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and of course leave a comment. Don't forget to support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until next time, this is the Real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.